tonight, eh?
Milo, is that you?
There, I think I got it. Okay, so here we are. It's another AML podcast from downtown Busted Knuckle, Kentucky, on the 48th floor, high atop the Stuart L. Sterling building. Once again, well, you're not supposed to. You kind of killed it.
He was just admiring the view, that's all. This 48th floor is just breathtaking.
It is really high up.
You do Anybody else feel that swaying?
Yeah, I do.
Well, maybe we should pick a material other than cardboard to build these buildings out of.
That safety strap looks loose.
I just put a bungee cord over it.
Okay, that'll work.
Bruce, whenever you saw the Johnny Carson show, when Ed McMahon did his big intro, you didn't hear Doc Severinsen going, ah.
Oh, because they have professional staff.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so this show was Bruce Wilson's idea. So, Bruce, we're here. I'm going to introduce everybody from right to left.
All right.
We have Shane Mason, Shane the Young Gun Mason from Kansas City, Missouri.
Howdy.
On the Missouri side of Kansas. What river is it? Oh, it's the Mississippi. No, it's not the Mississippi.
The Missouri River.
It's the Missouri River, right along the border of Missouri. What a coinky-dink. And then
weird how that works, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's like almost like they planned it. And then all the way over in Hartford, Connecticut, we have Kaylee Zheng in West Hartford, right?
West Hartford, yep.
Yeah. Huge Hartford Whalers fan, but when she moved there, she found out they left decades earlier.
They got beached instead of benched. They got beached.
Yeah. And then we have Jordan Kramer from Cincinnati. Do you live right in Cincinnati?
No, I live in Westchester.
Which is where in relation to Cincinnati?
15 miles north.
Due north or northeast, northwest?
Due north.
Okay. On Interstate?
75.
75. Oh, 75. So if you're going to Florida. Okay. And then finally, we have Bruce, the angry mail boy, all the way from the basement of the 48 of the Stuart L. Sterling building.
Yes, but I'm feeling only moderately agitated today.
Oh, okay. That's good. All right. So
I've been taking some classes, so.
You're taking a 12-step program?
Yeah, it depends on how well I do. Maybe like a 30-step, but it's flexible. It's flexible.
Yeah, it's the flex program. It's the flex. It's anger.
The flex step.
Yeah,
the flex step program.
It's the anger management program. That's the flex.
All he's saying is if he's not careful, this can quickly turn into a marathon.
Yeah. Yeah, love fest. Okay, Bruce, so this was your idea. Tell everybody what we're doing tonight.
What we're doing tonight is that there's always been the hue and cry and, oh my God, the hobby's dying. There's no young people in the hobby. What's going to do? Blah, blah, blah. And every time you go to a train show, you see lots of young people there. And when you get around on the various forms of social media and electronic media that are out there, you see lots of young people involved. So I was thinking, we've got to dispel this myth that there's no young people in the hobby. And I know we've talked to some great ones, great young people with our podcast and been associated with them. So, Shane the Young Gun popped to mind, Kaylee, because we did an interview with her, and she does all sorts of wonderful things. And then Jordan has just kind of, walked in the door and made himself at home, and he's keen. So here we got three, we'll call them young'uns, I guess, that are actively involved in the hobby. And I hope we'll talk to them and get some of their take on, how they see the hobby progressing, what they're interested in, and things like that.
Okay, the only thing I would just want to clarify before we go on is you said, you hear people talking and it's like blah, blah, blah. Is it blah, 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 or is it yada, yada, yada?
Well, sometimes it's blah, yada, blah.
It's actually womp, 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 womp.
I was going to say, that's what I grew up with.
That's it, okay.
Yeah.
So, Shane, how old are you now? Are you 22 now?
No, I'm 21. I'll be 22 next February.
Ah, I got a little ahead of myself. So, Jordan, aren't you 21?
I'm 22.
See, I was close. I was only a year off with either of you.
There you go.
And Kaylee, you're a bit older than that, but not much. You're a graduate from what university college did you go to?
University of Hartford.
And you know what? I have two favorite things about you now, Kaylee. I think my first favorite thing about you right this minute, right today, in the early days of the two. This is going to be broadcast fairly quickly, and by quickly I mean within a year. No.
That would be quick, yes.
Yeah.
My favorite in the fall of 2018. I think my favorite thing right now, Kaylee, about you is all these pictures you're posting with the dime stuck, you know. And then the last one was a dime and a hot dog.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, and then my other favorite thing about you is, I kept hearing about Kaylee Zheng. I would hear it from Ralph Renzetti, and I'd hear it from this person and that person. And everybody that I would hear about you from, they all had it in their head that you were a rocket scientist. So then I was just going to say, when I finally got to talk to you, you're not in fact a rocket scientist. You're an engineer, and what kind of engineer are you?
I am a mechanical engineer.
Right, and you single-handedly build Pratt and Whitney jet engines.
Not quite single-handedly, but sure. Yeah, we'll go with that.
So you're not a rocket scientist. You're an engineer that works on jet propulsion. Yep. Which is just as cool, of course. And I'm not going to ask you how old you are because that would be rude. But are you? I think you're less than 30, aren't you?
Close, a year over.
Oh, okay. Whichever that is. All right. So, anyways, so I right off the bat, we got two guys that are 22. We got Kaylee. This is actually even better. We got Kaylee, a young lady, and Bruce is right. Like, I personally, you guys have heard me say 1,000 times, I think there's going to be a groundswell in the hobby because all of these people that are now can connect before would be brushed off at clubs and things like that. They can find each other. Right, Shane?
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. And the other thing is, as we're speaking, we don't have Tony Cook, editor of Model Railroad News, here right this minute because he's busy actually doing the layout for some issue, whatever issue he's working on. But as we speak, it's only been less than a month since Shane Mason has been announced as the new associate editor of Model Railroad News.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations.
Thank
you. Congrats.
So does that mean you're going to be like tight-lipped about the hobby now?
I mean, I was before, but now I'm just part of the staff, and my name gets printed on there. That's really about the only difference. I get my name printed right in like that second page in.
Right.
Other than that, nothing else changes.
You're on the masthead.
Yep.
There you go. So why do they call it the masthead?
Well, otherwise it would just be the toilet.
All right, we need a good question, Bruce, to get this going. How many? I'll start it out. This is a good question. I'm going to ask Kaylee first because I think you're the perfect age to ask question to. How do you feel like in the last 5 years you've been able to connect with people your age or younger, or just in general, because of social media?
I would say probably infinitely, just 1,000 times possible. I mean, back in the day, I know we keep mentioning it on the other shows that way back when the only way to connect was to actually go to your local club and then get involved and kind of network that way. But now with the advent of social media, it's almost instant. You see someone post something on their page on Facebook, and you immediately have something to connect to, rather than back in the days you kind of had to fish around to find that connection.
Yeah, and do you find like Shane? Do you find like it's easier to find people your age or anywhere under the age of 35? Like, is it just kind of happen or what?
I think people naturally draw towards people closer in their age group. So when you get on these online groups, especially when you have a community such as the Modeler's Life that's been built up, where everybody's so close knit. It's really easy to connect with everybody, but like I said, people tend to gravitate more towards their age range, and that's natural in any hobby or given circumstance. I know a lot of the older guys in the club tend to hang out with more of the older guys. I tend to associate pretty well with everybody, but I think the internet opens up a lot of avenues in terms of finding those young people, because I don't think they're not going out and joining clubs like a lot of these older guys are. They're a little tougher to find, because I don't think as many of them go out as much as some of the older groups, but they're definitely out there. Another thing we've talked about before a lot of times, Tony and I, we talk about it. It's a little bit harder being a young guy trying to come into the hobby versus being, one of the older guys having a layout and being able to go and operate whenever, versus being young, having obligations or not being able to operate or not having the ends. So it definitely makes those younger people easier to find. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. And I think, to get back to the social media part, you're seeing with the younger people, you're seeing a diversity because of the Facebook groups. You can now go, say, for example, for me, Southern Railway Modelers. I know there's several people, mine and Shane's age, on that group that are specifically modeling the Southern Railway. It's so easy to find what you like and find like-minded people. Now with Facebook, the forums, YouTube, it's made the world where the young people don't have to, like everybody else is saying, go out to clubs, go to a local hobby shop. They can sit at home while they're doing something for their college class and find somebody to connect with.
Yeah. So, and do you feel like you're drawn to, like Shane says, like Shane and I hit it off. They're part of the beauty of the social media is it knocks down the age barrier. Because Shane and I hit it off, well, like you and I hit it off right away. There was no controversy at the very start, was there? I don't remember.
Oh, no. Our first meeting was absolutely stunning in fashion. Truly breathtaking, the art of our first meeting was.
Yeah. Well, little did I know you'd end up as the I bet you the association with me is probably what got you a kick in the door on the Model Railroad News thing.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah, yeah. Let's pretend, anyways.
Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah,
I'm sure that Tony guy had no pull. They just looked at it and said, "Well, he knows Lionel Strang." So.
There you go. Exactly. But you guys must notice. Like, I mean, it's obvious that I'm a big fan of the digital world and social media, and like, I don't really care how old somebody is if they want to be friendly and want to talk whatever. And I mean, you guys, that was a big part of it, eh, Bruce? Back in our day, back in the day, I mean, to break into a club or something like that, you had to go to a club or you had to go to a meet.
That's right. And I can remember when I was high school and university, myself and my next door neighbor, who was about a year younger than me, we got involved in the local model railroad club. We were there's a couple other young ones there. We were all interested in trains, and there wasn't the old guard giving you the stink eye, like, why are you here? Everybody was friendly, and it was a good introduction to the hobby. And then later you get involved with things like I got involved in a club out Edmonton, and got on well there. And then you get finding out more about the NMRA and that kind of thing, and having a good time. And there's unfortunately still some in the NMRA are of the, let's say, less than social variety towards new people coming into clubs. They tend to ignore them, and that's the worst thing you can do. Like, if you're at an NMRA meet, division, region, national, whatever, you see someone who kind of just standing around wondering what's going on, go up and shake their hand and say, hey, how are you? And don't brush them off, because you were that person at one time. So and certainly these days I think it is a lot easier to get on, like Jordan was saying, that there's so many different groups on Facebook. You can find anything that interests you and others are interested in. It's you got your profile pic and people can see where you are, but it's more like anonymous when you start getting on there and interacting, and it's like I think it's made it a lot easier for everybody of all ages to get involved and interact. And like you've said all the time, there's going to be a big explosion, and model railroad goo is going to be everywhere just because of it.
I think so. And Kaylee, being a what do you prefer? Do you prefer if I like to I'm a goofball, so I like to say being a girl. Does that offend you at all?
No, hey, youth is powerful, so I'll go with it.
So okay, being a girl and being young, you must have. I remember when we talked in our interview, you said you were kind of like out there by yourself, and all of a sudden, what has it been? 5 years, maybe? It feels more. I guess the podcast started 4 years ago, so maybe in the last 5 years seems to be when it's all. Like you must find it. Like, do you find? How about this? Do you find that you sense any kind of it's a girl when you're talking to people, or do you feel like because of social media, people are like they don't care anymore? They just want to talk to people that know stuff.
It's interesting because I think I get a little bit of both, but not in the sense of, oh my God, it's a girl. I get the sense more of, wow, it's a girl. Holy cow. And she knows stuff. So it's kind of in a sense an excitement of sorts.
Yes. Okay. And do you notice a sense that it's easy to find people? Like I think what's going to happen is this groundswell of people in their 20s and 30s that are going to have found each other. Like 30 years from now, that's when you're going to notice that the hobby's just like steaming along like full blast because these people will have known each other for so long.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
Because it's just that much easier to find people. And I guess the question we're asking is, I don't know how we ask this question, Bruce. Because when did you start your channel, Shane?
Oh man, that was 6 or 7 years back, maybe.
Yeah, so you were like, what, 15?
Yeah, roughly.
Okay. And did you feel like right away you were getting some sort of, not respect or notoriety, but did you feel like you were connecting with people? Did you feel like there was a lot of people you could connect with that didn't care you were 15?
When I first started out, it's much like with a podcast, it's tough to build a channel. So there wasn't a whole lot there, but there was definitely a core group that I connected to. A small number of subscribers that would watch every video. We would all comment on each other's videos, and I don't think it mattered really. One guy would be working on his layout, and we'd all throw out advice and whatnot in, and it just didn't matter where you were or what you modeled or who you were or how old you were. It just mattered that you were modeling.
Yeah, and you've made a great friendship with Don Ball, who's like my age, really old. Really old. Yeah, like you've made all kinds of friendships with all kinds of... I think that's where it's going to change. I think that's exactly where it's going to change. And I guess the question Bruce wanted to know was, do you guys feel like the hobby is like really accessible?
It's very accessible, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, go ahead, Shane.
I was going to say it's kind of a tough thing to answer because Tony and I have talked about this a lot, especially just because Tony and I are always talking about new models and whatnot, and it's a really weird concept because the hobby has evolved so much from what it used to be. You used to go down to the store and buy a locomotive or whatever for Christmas. The whole hobby has evolved so drastically in the last few years that it's weird because you get a lot of people that tell you they can't afford trains, and they are getting more pricey as the detail and whatnot comes up. But at the same time, you start to see a lot more guys that, they don't have 6 new scale trains tier 4s, but they got some GP38s I got from a guy from an estate sale or something, or at a show or something like that. So it's always weird, and we talk about that, the way the youth accesses the hobby, and the internet plays a huge role in that, just because there's so much that can be found online that you don't have to go and buy 1 million MR magazines or go down to a club and spend 1,000 hours with those guys. Or
go to a train show.
Yeah, you can literally sit in your home in your underwear and learn about putting in microtrains couplers or hand soldering track on Tim Morris's Fast Tracks channel. I mean, anything is out there, from wiring to DCC installs to adding grab irons. I mean, it's all available online. So it's always really it's different to look at, and it just kind of depends on the view you take to it. And the other thing is, Tony and I always talk about, is the hobby's becoming so much more than just putting trains on track and running it. You know, Tim Morris is big on, you know, now he's got Mount Albert scale lumber, he's got the wood kits, he's got his fast track, or all those Fast Tracks assembly fixtures. And that's one aspect of it, is just track building. You can look at Kevin Mark's work and just track work for days. But there's guys who do electronics. There's a couple of guys that do animation. There's guys that do, you know, like myself, that do DCC and sound. There's guys that do custom painting. So there's so many outlets in the hobby too. It's not just, you know, nailing down 3-rail O-scale Lionel on a piece of green 4x8 and putting in a couple of those buzzing electronic structures on it anymore. It's so many more outlets to it. It really just depends on what you're interested in, and it seems like there's always a group for it, no matter what you're doing.
And that's a good point. I think, Kaylee, you were going to say something, but that's a good point. Hang on. I'll just get my point out, then you can go. That's an excellent point, where you said you don't have to go out and buy 1,000 MRs anymore. You know, it's just there. Go ahead, Kaylee.
Yeah, I was going to say, kind of to add on to that, is that I think the hobby, I don't think, is any more accessible than what it has been in the past. What I think is there's more awareness of it. Now, kind of going back to your example, Lionel, how you always said, you know, you're watching Russian car crash videos, and suddenly now you're looking at model railroad videos. Right. I think it's so pervasive in American culture, especially with the Lionel set and the American Flyers, that it's model railroading is kind of iconic. But in today's world, where there's so many different things going on, there's a joy in just seeing the trains run, and especially in miniatures, just running around in a different layout. And obviously, the more elaborate or the more detailed you can get, it just draws you in.
Yeah.
But all that would not be possible if it weren't for the internet, if it weren't for YouTube.
Yeah, like you're right. It was, on one hand, before the advent of the internet, there was more hobby stores. So it was accessible in a physical sense, but there was more effort was required to get involved or to access the hobby. Whereas now, like Shane says, and it's not as disturbing when he says it, but you can sit in your underwear and be connected
or
with
naked in the field.
Yeah. Well, that's possible.
Well, yeah, whatever.
I have a good reason for that, though. Come on.
Yeah. Yes, you do.
I think it should be noted, though, that you hear a lot of this, the hobby is dying, young people aren't interested in the hobby. But if you look at, I mean, just take our core group, for example, the Modeler's Life group. We have such a diverse array of members of this Modeler's Life community. You know, Andy's not much older than we are. Mike isn't too terribly, you know, he's probably between me and you, Lionel. You know, so we've got a great range. Ralph is an older gentleman like you guys. Great guy.
About Gordy.
We've got Gordy, who's closer to us as well. You know, we have a very diverse group, and you never hear any of those guys say it. You never hear it across big groups. It's always a handful of guys, and granted, it has come from the old guard before, but it's never many guys you hear. There's not as many guys saying that it's dying as you hear don't say it. And I think that should be noted, because, you know, everybody tends to focus on those few guys because you're like, is it really, though?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem that the hobby is dying, it's been dying since about 1956 when I was born. Because you look through some of the old, Slockar's out, the hobby's doomed. RC planes are out, the hobby's doomed. And like every 3 or 4 years, the hobby's doomed. But here it is, 2018, and the hobby's chugging along and doing quite well. But then you get some people who, have platforms and magazines and stuff like that. The hobby's dying. It's no good. Every time you purchase online, a hobby shop dies, and it's all begun. And and it's those type of guys. You need a swift boot in their derriere. Like, shut up. Pull your head out of the basement and look around. And I was surprised in the most recent NMRA magazine, the new president actually commented on a couple things that I was shocked. Was that he talked about the Kansas City show and the wonderful layouts that the Lego groups were doing, and he said he was surprised by the number of younger people who were at the convention and at the train show. And we've seen that at Springfield too. Like there's lots of younger people around at the train show, and they're not all hanging along with mom and dad. A lot of them have got a lot of bags of merchandise they're carrying around. So it's, the hobby is not dying. The young ones are there. It's just the old people who keep perpetuating the myth the hobby is dying. That's frustrating.
I think when you look at it, look at the definition. When you ask them, well, what do you mean that the hobby is dying?
Yeah.
Yes, if you take their perception of scratch building, kit bashing, that is the only true form of model railroading. Yeah, then the hobby is dying.
Yeah, that's a common one. You're not a real model railroader unless you scratch build everything.
Right, exactly.
No.
But when you take into account all the new products and all the new things that you can do, far from the fact that the hobby is dying. It's exploding.
Yeah, well, let's throw that out. That's something. The technology advances in even the last 10 years. I can remember back in the 80s. The CTC 16 series and Model Railroader. The first command control, and then now look at what can we do with command control and DCC and all sorts of things. So there's something that I know all of you are interested in. That Kaylee, especially, you're talking. Presenting clinics on how to install speakers and stuff. Shane has a business doing decoders and speakers and things like that. And Jordan, he's, it's the technology that's going to drive all this forward.
Okay. And that's always been something that I've talked about. From when I first started, a great example of that as of lately is the proto throttle. I've heard a number of guys say it brings so much more to the hobby. It brings so much more realism, so much more. I heard one guy say momentum. I heard one guy say mass and gravity. It brings so much more of that real life 1-to-1 to it. And like you said, that technology as a whole, between what Peter Borchert is doing with the self-automated passenger trains on his Rochelle layout, the proto throttle, animation, signaling. You look at across all this stuff, and I always joke around with. We've got a fellow here in town. His name's Jim McKenzie. We call him Mac. Great guy. He models CB&Q, I believe in the 60s, from St. Joe to Kansas City. Great guy. And he still has CTC 80 and old school phones on a localized line down there in his basement. And then we go over to some of these guys who have the brand new JMRI set up with all of it running and printing out all the waybills and everything. And we always just laugh at how much has changed from when Mac built his layout to now. But but like you said, technology is a huge driver, especially in today's hobby.
So now let me ask the question then from a younger person's point of view. You kind of been brought up with technology from day one. Me and Lionel, we played with dirt when we were young, and an occasional stick and rock. So, you've been brought up with technology, you're used to it, and that's got to be something that you're translating into the hobby with all the changes, and that's got to be driving some of your interest in the hobby as well.
I'd like to reword that question because I was kind of thinking the same thing. My take on that question is, and I think, Kaylee, you're the perfect age for this, because do you remember not having a personal computer, Kaylee, in your house, or have you always had access to a personal computer?
No, I didn't have access to. Well, actually, Mike, so I personally never had access to a PC when I was growing up. Not until I would say maybe 6th grade, which was 96, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
No, basically mid to late 90s, somewhere in there. I was fortunate that I had a little more early exposure because my uncle was studying to be a computer science major.
Okay.
So that was my first exposure to it. But actually having one that I can call my own, or really the family could call our own. It wasn't until much later, like mid to late 90s, before we finally got one.
Okay.
And the days of dial-up internet.
Right. Yeah.
Man.
2440. Yes.
Okay. So my question that all the people when there's the hand wringing, I mean, I don't. They're not going to save the NMRA until they start to recognize that the people of your age are not interested in the magazine, and they're not interested. They're interested in the camaraderie, and camaraderie doesn't cost as much as they're charging. That's what That's what people are interested in. I mean, I had a really great conversation with Bob Rusick in Florida when he bought me lunch at Portillo's, which was very lovely.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, but
Now,
go ahead.
this is about the price. Why would you pay membership for something you can get on free on the internet?
Well, yeah, exactly. That's where I was kind of headed that way. And he said basically what he thought the AML was, Modeler's Life was, like our mission was to build a community. Like that's really what we're doing, is we're building a community of people, like-minded people. And long-winded, my question, the thing I'm the most fascinated about with the Shanes and the Jordans and the Kayleys is, you know, everybody always says, well, they're never going to be interested in model railroading because all they want to do is sit in front of a computer screen and play, you know, whatever, the War of the Worlds or whatever the game is called. And do you guys play video games and model railroad, or you're not that interested in video stuff, or where's that fit in?
For me, no, I don't play any video games. I unless you count some of the old 2.5D Sega Genesis, Nintendo, SNES type of things, then sure. But for most part, for me, I don't focus on the video games simply because I find I actually get a headache from it, especially the newer 3D technology. It's too much.
Yeah, it's coming out. What about you, Shane?
I play video games very heavily. I'm a big fan of video games, especially a lot of the newer ones. Fallout's one of the ones that I play pretty regularly. I don't know if it's necessarily to say what I want to do every single day, all day when I come home from work. You know, I try to balance a lot of what I do. You know, I try to do everything pretty evenly, except for, you know, spend time with the girlfriend. You got to do that more in order to get hobby time. But
He's learning.
Yeah, I don't think
Shane, you're a good man.
I don't think technically you have to. I think
I choose to.
Yes,
I
I think
there
that's
you
what
go.
you're trying to
That's
say.
the-
You choose
yes.
to. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's young and having troubles
Yeah.
expressing the exact phrase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Shane-
then, and another thing, Shane, I know you're big into is the railroad simulators. You're quite involved in that, aren't you?
Yes. A lot of the Run 8 group online that runs continuous operations on the Run 8 game. You know, a lot of that stuff I enjoy doing, and I guess you could consider that modeling. We talked to was it Nick Ozarek, and he's pretty heavily into that stuff
Yeah.
as well.
The Roundhouse podcast.
Yeah. That brings a whole nother outlet to the hobby. That is not a physical, touchable hobby to say, but those guys, I mean, you could sit there for hours and listen to those guys. They've got dispatchers, yard guys, they've got hump operations, switching, road trains. I mean, it's a whole nother world within itself, and that is nice because it's available 24/7. I can go online and find anything I want. If I want to go switch, I can go switch. If I just want to run a road train, I can just go run a road train. If I want to dispatch, I can dispatch. But you know, that's the thing, is I try to balance everything pretty evenly, you know, and because I feel unproductive. It's a lot like watching TV for me. I hate watching TV or a movie for a long time because I just feel unproductive. So I try to do a little bit of video games and then a little bit of modeling. That way I've got something to show for my time.
Yeah. How about? I was gonna say, like, the one game I could play nonstop, and the reason I don't do it is because I don't. When I start doing it, I don't get up from the TV for about a week. It's called iRacing, which is
yes.
which is racing online with other people, and it's like I don't get up from the screen from that. But but after a while, you just get tired of it, and you want to go back to something that's 3D, that's real, that you can touch, and it's more. You feel more a sense of accomplishment when you're actually touching and doing something than just staring at a computer screen or playing video games, because at the end of the day, you haven't really done anything other than push buttons. You might be better at pushing buttons than somebody else, but that would be about it.
And that's what I always tell people, you know, and like I said, I played video games. I model significantly more than I play video games, that's for sure. But that's just because that's what I'd rather be better at. I'd rather be better at the weathering, the putting lights in, writing reviews, because Tony keeps me busy on that all the time. I'd rather be better at that stuff than, like you said, I'm really good at pushing buttons really fast.
Yeah. What about you, Jordan? Where do you fit in on all this?
I actually fit in with Shane. I do a lot of gaming on the side, but that's mostly on weekends when I'm not working. But I also, while I may be gaming, I may be talking with somebody and doing modeling.
How do you? Okay, now how do you do gaming and modeling at the same time?
You got some games that you can do that with.
I can't
Some
even.
game.
I can't even run a podcast and send a message to Bruce at the same time.
This is true.
I could kind of see that. You know, they've got the casino games. If you just put a slot machine on auto spin, go out and paint something, come back, it's just going to keep spinning.
That or, I don't know if you play it, Shane, but GTA. Somebody.
Yeah, used to.
Okay. Yeah, I don't do it anymore, but.
What is GTA?
It's not the Greater Toronto Area.
Grand Theft Auto, I think.
Oh, Grand Theft Auto.
Oh yeah, no acronyms. Come on, we've been down that road before.
But
I got in trouble for that the other day.
What's that?
Got in trouble for doing that the other day.
Doing an acronym?
I wouldn't say necessarily got in trouble, but we got a new proofer for Model Railroad News, and they put out a new guidelines to write by, and they said we can't use acronyms until we've at least spelled out whatever we're trying to talk about first.
Yeah.
So like in that case, I'd have to put GTA first, and then or Grand Theft Auto, and then after that I could put GTA. Apparently, that's in response to a handful of supposedly one of the new changes. I could be wrong. You may have to ask Tony, but I believe that's one of the things that was updated.
Yeah,
that makes sense. In report writing from day one of my business, we've done that. You know, XYZ Company Limited, and you have to spell it out first, and then you can go with the short form after. But that's the way I've always done it. So yeah, it makes sense because some people have, you know, GTA, Greater Toronto Area. Lionel will know what that is, but you know, others will say no, it's Grand Theft Auto, and then you know the ABC, you know, is it Australian Broadcasting Company, American Broadcasting Company? So if you spell it out, identify it, then you're after the races.
oh yeah, and Lionel, you brought up iRacing. That's a game I play.
Oh yeah. Well, don't say that. Then I'll be digging it out again.
So there's a good chance Lionel's whipped you once or twice.
Be going door to door with Jordan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, we're all in it. So basically, do we feel like do you guys have a sense that there's a lot of younger people? Because here's what I think I've discovered with the podcast is that I think I published, or I'm about to publish episode 110, which is Ron Marsh. And of those 110 people, maybe 5 or 7 of them, we've interviewed them more than once. And so I bet you there's been at least 90 different people that we've interviewed. And of those 90 people, I bet you 87 of them said they've been model railroaders since they were a kid. Because I think it starts when you're a kid. I mean, for almost everybody. So do you guys sense that there's a lot of people your age in the hobby, or do you feel like you primarily end up talking to people older than you? And I mean, you guys make great point. Like we got Gordy Robinson, I think he's 33, and we got Andy Dorsch, who's 37, and Mike Wachowski, I think is either just late 30s or I think he's still in his 30s, although he looks pretty bad, so he needs these on.
Got the spoon.
The spoon?
And Spoon just looks rough.
He's like mid 40s. Are you kidding me? He's got a kid in university.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Man, are you getting old? Holy moly! Guys in their 40s are not kids. Trust me.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
No, but it should be noted. Spoon acts like one.
That
was a big note.
Yeah, duly noted. Yes.
I'm gonna have to pull over when I'm listening to this one. The spoon.
I will say this: for 3 or 4 years, I worked at a place in Westchester called Entertainment Junction. It's what they call the world's largest indoor G-scale train display.
What's it called? What's it called?
Entertainment Junction.
Entertainment Junction.
Yes. And there was younger people coming in around me and Shane's age who had never seen a train set before, but they were getting one because their grandfather had one, and they wanted to see what this hobby was about. They were buying starter sets, and then coming back up. Oh well, how can you do this, do that? Add, basically wanting to add more and more to their set, and that's how I think a lot of the people. I don't know if it's a normal thing, but I think younger people, me and Shane's age, they may not have gotten the train set as a child, and they may not have been a model railroader as a child, growing up, but they're coming into the hobby because they're finding it online and going, huh, that looks cool.
That's a good point. I think that would be true. There's a lot of finding it online and then maybe getting involved. That might change too. Everything is going to change. Now, and I just thought of something while you were talking there because you said you worked in the store. And I think this is a really good question. Part of Bruce's original question with the constant hand-wringing and people saying, oh my God, it's so expensive. Are you guys offended by the price of the hobby? Or, I mean, now I'm talking to three pretty successful people here, but are you guys offended by the price of the hobby, or do you guys...
I'm 21. I'm always offended.
No, actually, It's actually the other way. When you're 65, you're always offended.
I'm offended. You would say something like that.
Well, I'm offended.
I'm offended. You'd be offended about him being offended.
I'm offended that you're offended because I'm offended that he's offended.
Well, I take offense to your offense.
Well, now I'm offended that Jordan's not offended.
Yeah.
Well, Jordan probably is
you're
offended,
all
but
offended.
Is Katie offended as well?
Yeah.
I was going to say, now she's offended because we're not involving her in the offensive actions.
Katie, we're offended that you're not offended that we're all offended.
This is about
Oh my God, I can't breathe.
So, what point were we trying to make here?
The point.
Offense at the price of the hobby.
Oh yeah, and you said somebody said Katie. So what do your friends call you, Kaylee? Katie or Kaylee?
Kaylee.
Okay.
Well, it's Kaylee, but
Do you have anybody that refers to you as Katie?
it's more sort of. I have a friend who refers to me as KT.
Ah, yeah. Well, yeah,
Yes,
KT. Yeah. Well, I'm using the Sudbury slur, so I'm coming up with Katie.
Yeah.
Well, and that I was going to tell you a whole story about LJB, but we'll leave that for another podcast.
Yeah.
But then, getting back to us older guys, back in the day, we went out and dropped $10 on a Tyco locomotive kit or something like that. That was a big pile of change. But when you look at inflation and things like that, it's not all that much more expensive than it was then. Yeah, sure. Now it's maybe a couple $100, but in the grand scheme of things, it's
Well, and I
you
personally,
can whinge and whine about the cost, but then what do you do with the hobby? How many guys will drop $500 on a new driver because it's going to help them hit the ball
well, yeah.
3 yards more? They think.
Well, that's
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say what I think. Me personally, I'm not offended because that's like you said, I'm successful and I can afford it. But what I think the hobby kind of fails to do is that we don't really advertise the entry level stuff as much as we used to. Everything you see kind of straight from the get go in the magazines and whatnot. It's all the scale trains, the tangents, the exact rail. What's Blaine's new company, Arrowhead. We see a lot more of that publication in the media. I think what the hobby could benefit is some of the more beginner, lower entry point type models, the Bachmans, the
Athearn, Roundhouse, yeah,
right, the Roundhouse. Although that one is I'm a little miffed at because I think that is a little more expensive, especially their new Roundhouse line, which is basically the old blue box tooling for the price of ready to run models.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little perturbed about that one, but
so that offends you.
that one, yes. That one, yes. But
all
overall,
right, but
like Bachman, we don't, you see them advertise the Spectrum, but you don't see them advertise the what's the line they have with the blue end and the white box.
The Sound Value.
Yeah, Sound Value, and then there was also another freight car line that was very basically economy priced.
I think I know the one you mean. I just can't.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
We all get the general idea.
Yeah.
That's actually
But
Kaylee. That is an excellent point. I love that. On the one hand, I hate this podcast because it's a monster and it's like a lot of fun to do, and I can't see any reason to ever stop. But on the other hand, I love it. But on the other hand, I love this podcast because that's an excellent point. They only seem to advertise the latest and greatest. Like you're right. Scale Trains concentrates on their rivet counter this and their that, and yet they have other stuff. There's other stuff there people want to buy.
Exactly. Like the whole Kit Classic lines. That's perfect. I think $14-15. That's
yeah.
I think that's nothing. That's a no-brainer.
Well, what Jordan, you were cranking out some the other night.
AccuRail
stuff. Okay.
Yeah. And there's kits. Like Kaylee said.
Yep.
$13, $14.
Yeah.
But I think it should be noted, and this is a point I made with Steve Priest a long time ago, because he told me the same thing, that the prices of models are outrageous. And I told him, Steve, I don't think it's really unfair. Because when you think about it, you used to go and spend, like you said, $10 on a kit, and then you'd spend hours putting it together. Or now, for a little bit more money, you get a model that is literally ready to go. And Steve told me that he thinks it's outrageous. I think it allows me to focus more on other aspects of my hobby. Because I don't want to spend 6 hours putting a locomotive together and then another 3 hours painting it. This allows me to go straight to, in my case, DCC sound or weathering or operating. Yep. I think it streamlines a lot of that. So I think a lot of people get wrapped up in the price thinking about the model itself and what you're getting. But what you're really getting is a lot of that time back in exchange for a couple of dollars more.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then you get the ones who... and I'll say they're probably all of an older crowd that you're now what they call the checkbook model railroader. You don't have any real skills because you don't build anything. But, if a guy is at a stage where he can hire somebody to come in and design and build him a layout, and that he can populate with ready-to-run cars and stuff and get enjoyment out of it, what's wrong with that?
And like I said,
there's absolutely zero wrong with that. It's a different approach to the hobby.
Yep. No, and like I said, it allows you to streamline and get to what you want to do quicker than, like I said, sitting around and spending hours on one locomotive. Now you can skip that and go straight to the weathering or the lighting, the sound, the operating, or you can get right to, kit bashing. Whatever it is, it allows you to get to your, in a transportation term, to your destination quicker.
Right.
In a sense.
Right. And I think that's why people say the hobby's dying, is because that old school mentality of needing to earn your ranking, it can now be quote unquote bought, is not all goes back to how you define what is model railroading. Is it building? Is it running trains? Is it building a layout?
The answer is yes.
Exactly. It's all the above.
Model railroading.
Yeah. And like I said, I think a lot of people have a tough time gauging it now because there are so many outlets. You can't just look at locomotive building and be like, well, no, the hobby is dying. You're right. Statistically, from the 90s to now, a significant number of people have quit hand building their locomotives. You're right.
Yep.
But if you look at the number of guys putting, proto throttles together or doing YouTube videos from Australia about scenery or putting in decoders, then no, I think the hobby is exploding.
Yep.
But I think you can't measure it by one small interest group.
Exactly.
Can we say that the hobby isn't dying, but certain facets of it have slowed down and other facets have picked up, aka technology, the technology side of it?
I think a really easy way to say it is the hobby's not getting bigger, it's getting wider.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah, it is good. That's who's writing your stuff?
I write for Tony Cook. They put me on a masthead occasionally. It's cool.
Well, somebody else said that. I think Tom Jacobs said that when we were talking to Bob Frischelli. He said, even if you didn't add one, like say over the next 5 years, you didn't add one single person to the population of model railroading and it stayed at whatever the population of it is, it's like a chia pet. It's like it's going to explode because that same number of people are now in contact with each other. Like today I was trying to call this blew me away. I love this. I love the fact that a dumb guy from grade 12 that stumbled out of high school has created this community, because it's like I started it, but everybody's making it. Like it's nothing without all of us. So it's not me. It's all of us have done this. And today I was trying to call a company in Great Britain, and I could not get. Every time I dialed the number, I couldn't get through. It would say your call cannot be completed. So then I sent Peter Borchert, who I met on the podcast and who is a fellow model railroader. I sent him a message. I said, "Can I call? I can't find your phone number. Give me your phone number because I'm trying to call you." So then I went over to the telephone store and I said, "Hello, my phone. I can't call England. I'm trying to call Great Britain and it's not going through." And of course the guy called the guy and the other guy called another guy. And eventually they figured out you had to hit the plus sign on this for today for some reason or other. And so so then I called Peter Borchert. And it's like, it's the community. It's like just spectacular. You know, it's like what we're doing tonight. And I don't know what point I was trying to make other than I guess you said it was getting wider. And I've heard that argument before. And I think that's a great argument because it is. It's kind of like, it feels like that scene in Braveheart where Mel Gibson's like, are we going to do this? And it's like we're all gathering together and we're going to surge forward as this great unstoppable mass. Like we made some great points, you know, like what you said, Kaylee. Like they only advertise the expensive, the best stuff, and there's lots of other good stuff. And you know, Shane saying it's wider, and like you said, you know, and that's another good point you made, Shane. Like another part of the hobby now has become making YouTube videos. And old guys sitting around talking to people. I think that's become we're all much more connected than we ever were before. Mm-hmm. And I think Bruce's original thought was, I mean, it must just be like spectacular. Like how many people do you feel that you know? Well, we were saying it earlier in the show. Like as soon as I said it, then you guys rambled off. You know, Gordy and Mike Wachowski, and I mean, we're missing a whole bunch of people here. There's a bunch of people whose names we're not mentioning, and there's all kinds of us that are of that age. Kenny Broomfield is, you know, I mean, there's all kinds of, well, and Morgan. I don't know how old Morgan is, but then there's that young guy in Green Bay, the Mike Ostertag. Man, did you age yourself there, Bruce? You know, that young guy.
Apparently, that young guy, you know, he's 20 years younger than me.
Yeah. Which would make...
I'll just get my walker and go to the kitchen and get a drink.
Let me just break out a pacifier while you work on that there, Bruce.
Yeah, okay, please, yeah. Oh, Lord.
Lord.
Here's another question I want to throw, because I'm interested to see what Kaylee has to say about this. You've certainly been involved of late giving presentations on installing DCC sound and things like that. That's certainly a big part of the hobby, and I know you've been around several different, I guess, clinics or meets or whatever you want to call them in the New England area. Yep. The reception to that, is that everybody accepts it as this is, you know, somebody who's telling us something that's really important, or are they kind of going, yeah?
I think let's try this again. For me, I find it the feedback I get from a lot of people who do attend my clinic is that it's very enjoyable. I definitely know my stuff, but what keeps a lot of people coming back is the way I present it. You know, it's not just a dry monotonic kind of presentation. It's dynamic. I fold in the way I present, I typically fold in some jokes as well. Sometimes different internet memes I would occasionally put in. So for example, like on the presentation on the speakers, right? I talk about a slide where the new technologies, the new phones, the Samsungs, the 6, 7s, 8s and whatnot. But as I introduce each model line, so I flash through a 6, I flash through a 7. Well, the Samsung 7 was having the battery problem, so I put a GE that was flaming up. And that kind of keeps people interested and attentive because you don't know what's going to come up in the next slide.
Right. Okay.
So I think it's a combination of having a showmanship a little with the presentation, but also having that knowledge. A lot of people are easy to overlook. Okay, yeah, no, she knows her stuff. Yeah, despite that she's a girl, she can present, she can talk, and she can introduce a topic and break it down into a digestible chunk.
Okay. And the other question I have follow up on that, because I know you attend these. Did you find it the social aspect of attending meets and interacting with that, is that certainly something that are people losing interest in that, or it's going to keep on going because people like to get together and talk about model railroading?
Oh yeah, totally. I definitely say it's more of the latter than the former. I don't think socializing is ever going to go away. I mean, looking at just the RPM, the amount of growth that we have in the New England RPM, year after year after year, we're constantly setting records because there is that level of camaraderie, that level of connecting and just sharing ideas and participating is what keeps it going, what keeps that machine fueled. A lot of times for many folks, these meets are the only time you get to see someone in person because we're busy with our day-to-day lives. We're busy with our jobs, our families, our other commitments. That these meets, these physical meets, they're invaluable.
Right. Now I'm going to throw a similar question at Jordan. Have you attended any NMRA meets or clubs or things like that? And if not, why not? And if you have, what have you gotten out of it?
I was involved in a club back when I was still doing the Lionel stuff. And eventually the reason why I left was it was still the good old boys network. They didn't want to upgrade to the newer technology and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is this weekend coming up in Westchester, there's our local NMRA train show. And the nice thing about that is because in Cincinnati we're lucky, all the clubs are based out of one building. A lot of our clubs are based out of one building in Cincinnati because they got, back in the 90s, they got an agreement with the school districts to base all a school district out in Ross, Ohio, which is about 25 miles northwest of Cincinnati. They got an administrative building that they could put all their layouts in but because I was in that club, the people know me from there. And now that I'm doing HO, they're like, oh, well, here's this. They have more information to help me out to get back into doing it.
Are you connecting with those people online more?
Not really, because a lot of these gentlemen and ladies don't have Facebook.
I know, that's the other thing, That's what blows me away. Is like, I don't think we're even scratching the surface.
Oh, definitely not.
Like the podcast, like, I don't know, in September was downloaded like 10,000 times.
Wow.
And
I'm sorry.
Why are you sorry?
Because I kept hitting the download button.
Yeah, very funny. Well, I happen to know that 10,000 downloads was in 18 different countries. So try again.
I'm a hacker.
Yeah.
He's got a VPN mask.
Now I can't remember what I was going to say. It was something
You're
about
asking to connect more.
Yeah, because and then he said no because the people aren't even on Facebook or whatever, and people get excited that it's been downloaded 10,000 times, and I say I don't think we're even like I don't think that many people listen to podcasts. Like, I think the percentage of model railroaders that are listening to podcasts is probably less than 10%.
Oh, I think you're probably right.
So, I mean, can you imagine as the years go by, as everybody gets more and more, that's what got to me when Jordan said that. It's like, it kills me. Like, you meet people every day. It's like, I don't do social media. Oh, so you're just kind of going to sit here and watch the world go by then? You're going to sit on the sidelines and watch the world go by? Yeah. Or they don't have... It's amazing how many people are still not connected.
Oh, and it's like you've mentioned before we've talked that all of a sudden you're walking down the street and I've got some trains. Would you like to see them? And some guy you never knew of. He's got the magnificent layout in his basement.
Well, wait till you hear it.
It's a big secret. And then I can remember back when I was living in Newcastle, we had to get some together for the local arts committee where we had our layout. And I talked to the guy at the Model Railroad Industry Association. So this would be about 1992 or so. And at that time, he was telling me that it was like a $4 billion with a B dollar industry was model railroading. So I can imagine it's only significantly bigger than that now. So I don't think anybody really knows how many people are into it, but it's a big number.
And this story will blow your socks off. Now that we've talked we've allowed everybody else to talk, let's talk about me again.
Okay.
This story, and I got a really good question too, but I'll come back to that after I tell this story about me. It's not. So Barb, my secretary / friend, was we're having our municipal elections, and she was out helping a lady running for councillor. So she goes up to this house. The guy lives. I live like kind of right on the edge of my town, and just outside of my neighborhood, it's farmland. And so, anyways, they're going door to door down these farms, and she goes up to this guy's door and knocks on the door. She's with the lady, and the lady's very excited that Barb's volunteered to help her. And it knocks on the door, and the guy opens the door. This is true, because I had Barb tell me the story like 7 times. So this guy lives about a mile from me. So he opens the door, and he goes, "Oh, I know who you are." And Barb goes, "Yeah, well, I'm your neighbor. I live like about a mile." And he says, No. She says, "You're Barb." And she says, "Yeah." He says, "And how do you know me?" She says, "Well, I see you on Facebook on Lionel's page all the time." It gets better.
Okay.
So she says, "Oh, you're friends with Lionel?" He says, "No. I just follow him because I've been listening to his podcast for the last 2 years." So she goes, "What?" She says, "Yeah." He says, "I'm a model railroader, and I've been listening to his podcast for about 2 years, and then I started following him. I'm not a friend of his on Facebook, but I follow him, and then I've seen you in some of the videos that he does." And I'm like, so there's a guy that lives 1.5 miles from me that listens to the podcast that's not on my Facebook page that I've never met, and he's been listening to the podcast. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, seriously? Like, there's actually, like, it's like, this is, I get all worked up, and I'm thinking, oh my God, like, this hobby is just going to go nuts.
Yeah, the only thing better to that story would be to open the door wearing a Modeler's Life t-shirt.
Well, yeah.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah. Okay, I had a good question for all of you.
We'd like to offer you season tickets to the Modeler's Life.
Yeah, there you go.
like Crosby handing out season tickets to the season ticket holders if you just showed up at his door with.
I know.
I'm sure with a couple of those buttons and stickers.
I know. I have lots of people say to me. I've had several people send me emails and saying, "Why don't you do a YouTube live stream?" And I'm like, "Do I have to? Like, then it's more buttons I got to push."
Yeah.
Someday when I figure it out. What everybody needs to really understand is the podcast has been run. I'm not stupid. I'm not saying I'm stupid, but I am like one of the dumbest guys you'll ever meet in your life. So it's like,
you're our dim-witted half stepbrother.
Exactly. Just think of me as your dim-witted brother, and everybody will be a lot happier. Okay, so Kaylee, when you were talking about doing your clinic, how about this for a thought? How did you meet people? Did they know you from the internet and they kind of went, oh, did they have some sort of background, kind of like, yes, I've talked to her online? Like, what was the first clinic you did?
The speaker clinic has been the first clinic I ever did. I now have a different clinic that I'm working on. And maybe a third in the works. I haven't quite decided yet, but I'm trying to remember if the first time I spoke was before or after Model Citizens.
Oh, yeah, you were in Model Citizens, too. That's right.
Yep. Yeah, I think Model Citizens came out before I did the clinic, so I had a little bit of some recognitions from that.
And did people start tracking you down online from that, do you feel like?
Not really, because unfortunately, because what Sarah Kelly was trying to do with the film festival, it had to kind of be a little bit hush hush.
Right.
So I think it suffered a little bit of a publicity and recognition because of that. But yeah, some people did know me from doing that. But I think I've been actually attending to the RPM meets and the NER meets, the NMRA local regional conventions a lot more before I started presenting. So people kind of knew me from just being visible.
Okay.
So they knew me, but they didn't really know me. Then
Right.
I started giving the presentations, and it just kind of took off from there.
All right. So let's start wrapping this up because I know what I'm going to do with this. Shane, I need your approval for this
Okay.
because I'm going to tell another little story. Let's get back to me. So about a week ago from when we're producing this, Shane said he'd done a podcast. Him and Tony Cook, the editor of Model Railroad News and the associate editor of Model Railroad News, had done a podcast. They interviewed Ron Klaiss. Sounds like nice. And what's the business called? Mind Mountain Models or something?
Mind Mount Models.
Mind Mount Models. You guys did a podcast, about a 25-minute long podcast with him, interviewing him about his new thing. And you said you're going to do it and blah, blah, blah. And Tony Cook does his excellent product news. And I'm sitting here, and I'm going to be completely honest. Let's be completely honest with everybody. I'm sitting here going, I'm kind of like going, I hope this turns out because I don't want to have to tell Shane. I don't want to have to say, oh man, the audio's not really there. So anyways, Shane sends it to me and it's spectacular. It's absolutely spectacular. I was like, I listened to like a minute and a half of it and I was like, oh my God, this is great. So you know what we're going to do on October the 29th, Monday, October the 29th on the free channel. We're going to have this show that we're just done. And then the end of it will be your interview with Ron Klaiss. What do you think about that?
I'd be offended if you didn't.
Right, but what do you think about it?
Well, I think it's a great idea.
Okay. I'm offended. You might be offended.
I'd be offended if you didn't put it on there.
But
tell me you would, and then if you didn't, I'd be offended.
But I'd be offended if you told me you might be offended. So it's like, there you go.
Well, I'm already pre-offended anyway, so.
Well, I'm already offended that you didn't that the show wasn't more than 30 minutes long. So there, I'm offended.
I come offended pre-installed, Lionel. You gotta know it's just part of this generation anymore.
Is that an easy install, or do you have to like put a new card and stuff like that?
It's kind of like a 6-pin. You get 6 pins, but there's still going to be a little bit of soldering involved.
All right, okay.
Oh yeah, Kaylee, you were talking about you installed some 21-pin, whatever it was you installed.
Oh, yeah. It was a homemade wiring harness for a 21-pin decoder.
Was it hard to do? Must have been.
No, it wasn't. It was, it's interpreting the information that's out there. I mean, it was a combination of looking at the NMRA spec, looking at the German spec, and then also Brian from Streamline Backshop was a huge help with that, too.
Oh, fantastic guy.
Oh, we still got to talk to him.
Yeah, we do.
There's like way too many people. We need to all fan out amongst the people and start producing podcasts that we can put on here. There is like I can't even, you know what? In the last couple of months, maybe because the podcast seems to be getting, again, it's this thing that's out of control. It's like, I'm like hanging on for dear life now.
It's like the McGurk spot on the couch.
Yeah, it's way beyond that. It's like I'm just flat. It's like I'm just hanging onto the wheel, hoping to hit some bushes or something. Like I got to figure out how to slow this thing down. I'm dragging my feet and I'm throwing out anchors. I look like a bad Disney cartoon. Hanna-Barbera cartoon. I look like Fred Flintstone. I got my feet up. Yeah, so there's like so many. That was another guy I was going to interview a couple of years ago, and I forgot all about him. So where is he exactly? Brian from Streamline Backshops.
Just outside of Chicago, maybe? That doesn't sound right, but it feels right. It doesn't sound right, though.
Yeah, I think he's, one night. Is he in North Carolina?
No, he's in Illinois. He's somewhere up around Illinois, I believe. I don't know. I could get you in. Hang on. Let me just pull up his website here.
Anyways, he was a huge help to Kaylee. It's all right,
Well,
Kaylee.
he's a huge help to everybody. I've
Yeah.
talked to a lot of guys
Yeah.
that all seem to have connections to Brian. He's a great guy and super knowledgeable. God,
Yeah.
he'll sit there and talk your ear off about decoders if you let him.
How about this? Is this a true fact? The great guys in the hobby, the great people, the great guys and gals in the hobby that are friendly are unbelievably friendly and great to be around.
Oh, exactly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a fair statement.
And I think the internet has brought us so. I mean, look at the 6 of us. How many of us are there? 5.
There's
Yeah. Well, 5.
Dim-witted brother.
Yeah,
He was
exactly.
in the
I
area.
also said 4 and I didn't count myself.
I have absolutely no problem admitting that for reasons that we don't need to go into here, but I have a psychiatrist. And I've been to see her many, many times over the last 4 years, and she hates it when I say to her, well, if you would just think of me as your dim-witted brother.
You know, Lionel, I've started using that saying.
Well, I didn't say you could do that.
Well,
See, now you've offended Lionel.
Yeah, now I'm offended. Yeah, I'm offended, but you're calling.
Jordan, is what you got to do is send them like $75 to an account, and then every time you use it, you'll deduct a royalty payment.
Yeah, there you go.
all right, yeah, that's what I got to do.
Well, and how about today? Yesterday you posted a picture of your new car and what you were listening. I mean, is it any better to get a car that comes with my name on the dashboard?
I know.
I mean, how nice, how sweet is that? You're tooling around town and my name's right there. Kaylee, can you leave us with a final thought? We'll ask you. Actually, no, we'll ask you last. Jordan, can you leave us with a quick final thought? Go.
The hobby is not dying. We are expanding. We are not dying.
All right. Shane, quick final thought.
Same thing he said. I don't think we're getting bigger. I believe we're getting wider, and I think it's just a matter of time till you see another explosion or growth of this hobby.
And so can we use this interview tonight? How many days has it been since you were announced as the new associate editor of Model Railroad News?
I think it was October 1st. Well, it was official October 1st, but I don't remember when it was announced.
So, okay, so it was been official for 11,
Within the last week and a half or so. Yeah.
last 10 days. And can we use this as official that you will still talk to us, even though you're now an associate editor of Model Railroad News?
I'm gonna have to get you in touch with my people and let them kind of sort that out. I'm very busy, so I'll get you some names, some numbers, and we'll work on that.
Yeah.
I'll have my people with you, and we'll figure out something.
Yeah. See if my people will even answer your people's calls. See if you can get your people to get through. All right, Bruce, you got a final thought?
How about Kaylee's final thought?
Well, how about we let her do it after you? You're the old guy. We'll let the ladies.
Okay.
We'll let the ladies.
My final thought is, the hobby's not dying. It's some old people have preconceived misconceptions that because it's not being done their way, that they've done it, that it's all wrong and the hobby's dying. But like I say, it's been dying since 1956 when I was born. When you start looking at the MRs from then, it's always dying, but we're still here.
You were born in 56?
I was.
You're 62?
I am.
Maybe a doctor? Just saying. Take it any way you want, but, look in the mirror. I'm going to say, holy moly, the best part about this hobby now is I get to hang out with all these people of all ages. People of all ages now are like, it's like, it has completely removed. Andy Dorsch says it better than anybody else. He came up with this line. The internet and social media removes first date jitters.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
You've conversed. I mean, Kaylee, you talk about doing your clinics. I bet you met tons of people that you've met online, and then you meet them in person.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right.
Absolutely.
Final thoughts, Kaylee.
Yeah, the hobby's far from dying. I think people are scared, but truth is, we are here. We are proud. We'll be loud, and we're not going anywhere.
Perfect. Okay, so now we don't need to do I'll tell everybody about our Shane, you told everybody about our website. You did it all.
Yeah, we did it all in the end with Tony there.
Yeah, so we don't need to do it. So the only thing I'm going to leave you with at this point in the podcast, because up next is Shane Mason and Tony Cook interviewing Ron Klaiss about his new company that's called Teeny Tiny Models.
Close. Mind mount models.
All right. And remember, a modeler's life is considered marginally adequate by 6 out of 10 doctors.
Tony.
Yeah?
Tony, come here.
Hello?
The door's unlocked. Come here.
Is it? Are you sure?
I mean, it swings open pretty freely. I would assume that means it's unlocked.
Well, we've been installing those swipe card things. I guess this door doesn't have one yet.
I guess not. It's funny. It's right on the studio. Everything else has them, including the fridge. And it seems like only Lionel's card works on the fridge. We're still trying to figure that one out. But I haven't been able to get any of that Stone Canyon pizza out of the fridge, and I'm pretty confident it's not there anymore.
Oh, I'm sure it's probably long gone. Most definitely. Do you think all the equipment is still on? Do you think he's left it logged in so that you could, maybe we could actually do a recording or something?
I mean, I'm looking at the levels, and it seems to be green. Green all the way across the board. I tell you what, you sit over in that chair. I'll sit in this chair. That's not Lionel's chair because he would kill me.
Don't sit in Lionel's chair, yeah.
I'll pull this one out of the corner that's got dust and whatnot on it. All right. I tell you what. It seems to be on. Let's try and talk to somebody. Want to?
Yeah, let's give it a whirl. I got my headset on.
Cool. I've got Ron Klaiss downstairs with the car still running because we weren't doing anything suspicious here beforehand. Let's bring him up and talk to him about his new model company.
Oh, that sounds good.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Are we recording?
We are, actually. Right now, we are.
Holy moly. All right. Well, I started a new business, Mind Mount Models. It can be found at www.mindmountmodels.com. I am designing Craftsman structure kits using laser and stick, per piece items, and going to be slowly adding in resin castings. Doing textured wood, like the brick and the stone. I have cobblestone patterns. It's all coming together. I'm pretty excited about it.
And for those of you who don't know who's talking, this is Ron Klaiss. Klaiss is as nice as Lionel would say. Just want to make sure everybody's on par with our regular technical terms. And Ron has just, like he said, started a model business of making an assortment of things, hopefully down the road here. But did you say you just announced this, would have been October 1st, which is yesterday?
Yesterday, absolutely. Yep.
October 1st.
I was going to have a couple of structures in the pipeline and on the website before I released it to the public. And then I was sitting there during my break at work, and I'm sitting there, you know what? Today's the day. October 1st is the day. So I had all the flyers made up and everything. I was like, here we go. Let's just do this thing.
Just get a running start at it.
Yep. And it's, it's great motivation. When the orders start rolling in, it's like, oh, this is a for real thing. Let's do this.
So what was kind of your inspiration to start? Because I know I've been following you for, a couple, probably a year and some now, maybe 2 years, as long as I've been with the AML. And I've watched you through your layout, through the Canal Street project, especially when you first got the laser printer or the laser cutter and you were kind of tinkering on stuff like that. So what made you want to shift and start doing kits and offering, like you said, the textured brick and stone?
Job disappearing, I guess you would say. I was looking to add some supplemental income to my regular job that I have now, which takes up a lot of time. But my wife and I were talking, and she's like, you're just so damn passionate about model railroading, and you got the technical side, you got the artistic side and stuff. Did you ever consider doing laser kits? Those little, as she would say, cute structures. And I always say there's nothing cute in model railroading. This is model railroading. It's heavy, big machines, and it's not cute. But you know what? The first model that I ended up coming up with is actually pretty cute. It's Skip's Bait and Tackle. It's a nice little 2.5 by 2 3/4 building, and it's pretty neat. I was sitting there thinking about it. We talked about it about 10 months ago, actually. And when my last job ended and waiting for my next job to begin, I had about a month and a half or so of some free time. It was a nice little vacation. I've never had that in my life, except, I guess, as a kid in summer when summer kicked in. But being 46 years old and getting a month and a half, almost 2 months off, I was like, hey, this is pretty nice. And that's when I first started designing a lot of the structures, getting inspiration from a couple people that I asked about different types of buildings that they would be interested in, driving around, taking pictures of structures in my hometown and in the general area. When the laser finally arrived, about a month into it, I started tinkering around, and I was like, you know what? Let me try these, brick patterns and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, Jimmy Simmons from Monster Model Works says, I'm getting out of the industry for now. I'm going back to my old roots. And I was like, this is a perfect opportunity. I'm going to give it a shot. I mean, try and perfect these textures. So I started getting into the brick textures and stone, random stones and stack stones and cobblestones and all kinds of different things like that. Right now, everything's designed in HO scale. As they get it more established, the brick textures and the texture sheets will be easy to modify to different scales, O scale, N scale. I tried actually the brick, and it's so tiny that you almost don't see it. It's almost like just a bunch of little lines on the wood. So I'm not sure if I'm going to go N scale brick. I'm going to have to try and modify it and see if I can, fine tune the laser to get it that fine, because I'm trying to do a true scale brick. Mm-hmm. And like, if you look at the DPM kits and all that stuff, their brick on that are actually more like cinder blocks and, giant blocks that are, they're not like a regular 3x9 brick.
Right.
So that's kind of how it all started. It was just like what my wife said one night, why don't you give this a try? What did you ever think about that? I'm like, yeah, I've done it before. I've had other side businesses. I've done some layouts, custom layouts for a few people. I've done about 4 or 5 of those. And that was kind of a bit of a pain just because of the travel time and spending time in the people's houses and stuff. And this one kind of suits my demeanor, I guess you would say. So I'm pretty excited about this. I've been working at it nonstop for pretty much 10 months. Now that October kicked in, I was like, let's give this thing a try. Let's get it rolling. I got orders coming in already, and pretty excited.
I will say that's the one thing I was blown away with when you first started playing with that laser printer or the laser cutter. I keep wanting to say printer because I've got 3D printing on the brain. That laser cutter though was that brick and stone engraved wood, especially when you're working on that Canal Street project, just brings a whole lot more. Like you said, it's scale and it looks good. It's not that big cinder block looking brick wall, and that makes a world of difference. Yeah,
I really, I probably might bump it up just the tiniest percentage, because even in HO scale, it's a bit tiny. Mm-hmm. Not that, I mean, I can get the laser to engrave it pretty well, but even the 3-foot rule is good enough type thing. It looks like almost like a blank wall. Even if you paint it and you put the mortar lines in there, it's so tiny, even in HO scale, that true brick is too tiny for the eye. You don't even, mm-hmm. It doesn't even like register it almost, unless I'm just getting old and blind. I don't know. Maybe I should get a second opinion on that.
Yeah, it happens. I shouldn't be rude. Also in the studio tonight, we have Tony Cook. I'm sorry, this is all kinds of out of order. Lionel left me with the equipment on, so anything can happen at this point. But we have Tony Cook with us as well. My apologies, Tony. I should have introduced you when I introduced Ron.
You're actually following Lionel's playbook then, because he always dives right in and then has to back up and introduce everybody. So
there's always so much to talk about.
Exactly, you're rolling right at it. Ron, I think this is really awesome that you're starting this new company. I noticed on the Skips Bait and Tackle, one of your first 2 structure kits, it says it's for beginner modelers. So was that designed that way, or did it just come out that the kit was simple enough? Because I know these laser cut kits, a lot of times they kind of get branded with that a craftsman level project. And I know it can be a little intimidating for a lot of folks of, I don't know. But I caught the $25 asking price, that's one of the other things too. You think, I'd like to try one, but boy, they're pretty expensive. I don't know if I can do it. But this at $25, and it looks really neat. What's the design behind it that it comes out as a beginner project? Did you go after that intentionally, or it just worked out that way?
It came about sort of intentionally. I wanted to try something small, because this was the laser part of it was new to me. So I didn't want to spend, months and months designing this gigantic structure and not understand how the laser was going to read it and understand it. So I'm like, let me start with something small. I'm going to do this little building. It's a building that I needed for my layout anyway. I just happened to draw it, in some of the idea sketches that people do for their layouts. I was like, that little sketch right there, I'm going to do that building in real scale. I'm going to draw it up. I'm going to learn how the CAD program talks to the laser program, then how that laser program talks to the actual laser cutter. And it was just kind of a beginner kit for me, learning the processes of it. And as it came about, I was like, no, this is pretty cool. I mean, I can sell this thing at a good price. I want to get the idea for people that these kits aren't intimidating. They're not scary. I remember my first laser cut kit I built was actually 2006. So that's like 12 years ago. And I was sitting there going, I got it off of eBay. I'm like, boy, do I really want to get this? I'm kind of intimidated. And I used to do some pretty fine stuff as a teenager even. And for some reason, just that whole Craftsman structure kit type thing, it's like you said, it's been branded as, over the top and possibly hard to build. You have to be this master, carpenter and have all these tools. And guess what? You really don't. If you have some paints, you have an X-Acto knife, some files, some different glues, and you can build this kit no problem.
And I noticed that you include, it says you do the laser cut for like the structure, walls, the roof, the shingles, but you supply, looks like Tichy Train Group made windows and doors, and then Mount Albert Scale Lumber's clapboard siding. So yep. Guys will kind of have an idea of the quality level of some of the things they're getting. Because that's another thing with a new company. It's like, well, I wonder what their stuff's like. But seeing those names on some of the components in the kit seemed like a big plus to me as well. Like, oh, that'd be cool stuff.
Yeah, I talked to Don from Tichy at Springfield last year, and then I was getting in contact with Tim Wares from Fast Tracks and Mount Albert Scale, and they said absolutely you can use our products. I have no problem with that. I said, is it all right? Can I put your names on the packaging? They're like, sure, absolutely. They're great guys to work with, and so I said, you know what, we might as well let the people know what they're dealing with. On the skips, bait and tackle, all the windows are the plastic Tichy ones. I have the other structure, which is the Chesapeake and Ohio motor car shed, and that's actually based off of a real structure in Hinton, not Massachusetts, Hinton, West Virginia, in the yard there, that a couple of my C&O friends were like, well, we have these yards, we're modeling Hinton Yard, and we have this building and that building, but we don't have this building number 29. It's a motor car shed. I'm like, okay, let me look it up. And I did some research, found some drawings and stuff, and I measured off of those things, and I said, I can draw this up pretty quick. There's only 2 windows in the motor car shed. They're in the back, and those are Tichy. But the shed doors, there's 4 of them for different size motor cars and stuff, I guess. They're actually laser engraved and cut out. So it's a combination of laser engraving and Tichy plastic windows, and it seems to be a good combo.
Now, your laser cut items, are they all like a basswood, or some of the things acrylic or styrene, plastic type material, or both?
It's the clapboard siding and stuff. That's all the basswood. There's board and batten on the motor car shed. That is basswood from Mount Albert. The doors on the motor car shed that were engraved, I actually am using a micro plywood, a 1/32 micro plywood. I don't know how the heck they do that, but they have actually 3 or 4 layer plywood that thin, and I actually have some down to the 1/64th, and I'm still amazed that they have plywood that small. And if you buy, a 2 by 4 foot sheet or a 1 by 2 foot sheet, it's more than if you got cabinet grade 3/4 plywood at, like, let's say Home Depot or something like that. I was blown away. I was like, holy cow. But it's nice stuff. And then the board stick wood for any kind of trim and everything, that's all Mount Albert. And what else? I think that is it. Roofing materials are designed by me and either cut out on self-adhesive backing, like for some of the rolled roofing. The shingles that I've come up with That's on a laser board right now that I came up with, and that's on, I think it's 1/64. It's pretty thin stuff, and that lays down pretty nicely and gets a good effect for the shingles.
I will say, when I saw the photos, the 2 samples that you have on your website, I was blown away with how clean they looked. And I know they've been painted and weathered up, but it doesn't have any of that. Well, that was kind of short, so I had to filler that in. Everything seems to fit pretty well. Everything looks very clean, very well engineered.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I draw the items up in a CAD program, and then the building process starts. Cut my initial drawings out into whatever boards. I usually try a cardstock at first, just to see how the pieces are going to fall together in the 3D world, and then I'll cut it out on the actual materials, the clapboard siding, which is generally like a 1/16 basswood type thing, or the board and batten, or scribe sidings and stuff like that. And I'll cut it out, and then I'll start gluing the prototypes together. And I'm like, oh well, you know what? The way this material interacts on this plane of this wall, I need to bump it out maybe a 1/16 of an inch, or cut it back, or so the prototyping and the drawing is what really takes the most time. And then when I'm satisfied with that, then I'll print up a full kit and build it and paint it up. And generally by that time, it's all the little hiccups and stuff are worked out of it. And then that's what I use for my photographs. I was pretty stoked. I treated myself to a nice new Canon camera for the photographs. My first initial pictures, when I was, like you mentioned early on, I was putting up pictures of some of the brick textures I was experimenting with months and months ago and everything, and just different sidings and everything. That was just done on an iPhone. And, they have good cameras, but to get any kind of depth of field or anything, they just don't have it. It's not, I don't care if you get, the XX, iPhone 20 or whatever, it's probably not, they just don't capture that depth of field because they're all handheld. So by the time I get this camera that I got now, throw it on tripods, have it for time exposures, and set the white balances and everything, and I'm just blown away the way the pictures are coming out. I'm really digging the results.
The models they look awesome, and then you've got two. It says the random stone, and then the weathered brick. When you say weathered brick, it doesn't come painted, right? It's you etch it. But I assume it's got broken or damaged bricks.
Yep.
In the pattern.
I have a clean brick, a weathered brick, and then a random stone. The cobblestone will be coming out soon. I've already had people asking me about different scales. Most of them they'll easily scale up to O scale. I've had quite a few people already ask me about O scale brick. And like I was mentioning earlier, the N scale. If I was doing a true N scale brick, you're not going to see it. So.
I think that's a pretty good baseline for all of N scale, really. Is you're just not going to see it. But that was going to be my next question. Is from here, what are you looking at bringing out in the future? Where are you wanting to go with mind mount models?
Well, I have probably 5 or 6. I think it's about 6 buildings already drawn up. One, I'm in the prototype stage right now, pretty far along with that. So that means I'll be moving on to cutting out the actual building in the real materials, building it up. That most likely the next version of it will be the one that you'll see in the upcoming pictures for the covers and any kind of glam shots and stuff like that for the websites and everything. It's going to be a warehouse. It's a pretty decent sized building. It's inspired by a building right down the road from my home, actually. I would drive by it and I'd say, oh, that's a neat building. That's a neat building. And then all of a sudden when the Craftsman Structure thing came into my life 10 months ago, now I'm looking at buildings going, how can I build that? How can I design that? How can I tweak that? It's like inspiration at every corner. And now friends will say, hey, like I was telling some other people, Ralph de Blasi talked to me about a major size mill building out in Teichler's, PA, it's gigantic. If I built it true to scale, it would be about 2.5 by 3 foot.
Wow.
Might as well make it like a $1,000 kit, they'll never sell. So I'm going to it's a really cool looking building. I'm going to select and compress it and take all the cool features of it and kind of shrink it down and that's a possibility for the future. I haven't even started designing that one, just kind of getting ideas in my head. But there's warehouse buildings in the pipeline already. There are some coal trestles and some other types of buildings, and I'm pretty excited about what I have lined up for the future.
Tony, do you have anything else?
Let's give out the website again. He said Mine Mountain Models, and that's Mine.
It's actually Mount.
Mine Mount Models. I'm sorry. Yep. Yeah. So and spell that out for us for MINEMOUNT as in Thomas MODELS.com. That's one L, like I don't know, like language. Like sign language. Very good.
We almost had a sign language
Stretching
podcast,
for
folks.
it. That was good. But...
And you can buy one more thing, Shane. You can buy online. I just purchased the C&O Motor Car House kit, and you can pay through PayPal. Super fast, easy to go through and purchase those, and you select your shipping at the end. So, ordering online from the website is available.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead.
You can find us on Facebook. You like our Facebook page, and Instagram. I'll post like behind the scenes pictures more on Instagram, and go to the website and sign up for our email list. So any kind of new announcements and everything, you definitely get that first.
He just beat me to it. I was going to ask him if he had any other Facebook page or anything like that. He's good. See, this is why I bring you both on. I know now. I know why Lionel has other guys on. You just sit back and let them go. This is kind of nice. Well, Ron, we appreciate you taking the time and sitting down with us. I can tell you, I'm blown away by the quality of just the shots I've seen online, and I'm really excited to see what you come out with going forward, both in building kits and building material with the brick and the stone and whatnot. And I'm excited to see where you go from here.
Hey, Shane, Tony, thanks. I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Thanks a lot, Ron. Congratulations and good luck with the new business.
Thank you. See you guys.
See you. Well, Ron's gone. That was fun.
Sounds like he's got a really interesting company coming around. Yeah, it's too bad the Lionel didn't get to do that podcast.
Yeah, I know.
He'd have liked it. He'd have had a good time.
Oh, yeah. Sitting back and letting everybody else talk. He's real good about that.
It's not that hard to do. I mean, you can sneak in here and do this and see. It's not rocket science.
No.
But,
It's just little podcasting, that's all. Just a little podcasting.
Just a little podcast.
But
yeah. He'll never know. He'll never miss the tape that we use.
Yeah, of course not. We'll just plug it right into the system. He won't even see it.
He'll never know.
Well, we better give out the email address. Would you like to do so?
The email address, if you would like to contact us, you can do via electronic mail by sending us an email at modelerslife@gmail.com. That is modeler with one L, not two like Lionel.
And we also have a website. If you go to amodelerslife.com, that's amodelerslife, again, one L.com. You can find crew bios, which there's some really great crew bios in there. I don't know if you scrolled over that page. You can also see some of the Patreon stuff, as well as there's a link to the AML decal sets. So you can go over and pick up both. I believe you can pick up both last year's and this year's decal sets.
I'm still trying to figure out this year's set, because you're on the one side with the Dairy Queen thing, and then the other is it Lionel and Bruce?
Yeah, I don't know what photo it's from, but...
Yeah. But I got a graffiti. I think I'm going to do like a center flow hopper and put those on, but I haven't decided what model yet to use.
Yeah, it's got to be something big. It can't be. You can't try and squeeze it on the side of a flat car. It's definitely got to be like a reefer, something real big, stand out.
Definitely so. But yeah, you can find those on the Modelers Life website as well.
Well, I think we got all our bases covered, and it sounds like the alarm just went off, so it looks like Lionel's walking back into the building. Let's get out of here.
All right, let's go.
When you're brought into this world, well, they say you're born in sin. Well, at least they gave me something I didn't have to steal or have to win. Well, they tell me that I want it. Yeah, I'm a wanted man. I'm a goat in your stable. I'm a game worse to able. Baby, catch me if you can. Going down in a blaze of glory. Take me down, I know the truth. 'Cause I'm going out in a blaze of glory. No
It's another Lincoln Homer.